There's something that I've realized after speaking with a number of dance and theater companies on this podcast. Musicians like me probably don't think enough about the space in which their performance takes place. Sure, they'll think about the size of the stage or how close they'll be to the audience, or maybe to the bar. But I have to admit, if I was asked to put on a performance outdoors without a stage and where it's almost necessary to incorporate the environment as part of the experience, I'm not sure I'd quite know how to go about it. I might have to ask my guest in this episode for advice. Winifred Haun is a dancer and instructor, and she's very familiar with creating site-specific performances. In fact, it's kind of her specialty. Her dance company, Winifred Haun Dancers, will be returning to the stage this May 16th with an outdoor performance at Pleasant Home Mills and Park in the Chicago area. And even if you can't make that, be sure to visit their website, winifredhaun.org, to get access to their channel on Vimeo, where you can watch videos of past performances and that give you an inside look to the creative process of choreographing a performance of this kind. But first, let's hear from Winnie herself about what that process is. And musicians, pay attention. Here's Winifred. Here we go. Winifred, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. And you said it is okay for me to call you Winnie, right?
Yep. Definitely call me Winnie.
All right, great. Are you at home or are you in your studio?
I'm at home, but I do have a studio. I've repurposed a bedroom into a dance room. So, yeah.
Are you giving classes there or is that just for you?
No. Well, kind of both. I give classes there, and something that's been nice is just to have a room that's just dedicated to dance. I've got my dance books in there, and sometimes I'll just go in there, do some yoga, meditate, stretch. It's weird. I don't know why I didn't do this before, but anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. I did the same thing. My office became my home recording studio, in this last year as well. So. This is not it. The background that you see is not actually it. If I were to take down this fake background, you would see just a bunch of gear and guitars and just computer monitors all stacked up against each other. This is what I know about your company, and what I found interesting about it is that even before pandemic, one of the unique things that your company did was you did on-site performances, or as you put them, I think, is a site-specific performance. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that means? Kind of describe what that was and give an example of some of the performances that you did in that way.
Okay. Well, I live in Oak Park, and there are some old mansions in Oak Park that the Park District has taken over. So now they're public spaces. And I proposed to them about 10 years ago that we be allowed to dance or make dances for the space. And the thing that I love about that is that in a traditional theater, everything's very controlled, right? You have the lighting and the curtains, and everybody knows where to look, and it's very controlled. And what I love about the site-specific space is that it's a completely different frame for the dance, and the audience is actually free to look wherever they want to and to come to their own conclusions, to see a dancer dancing in front of a window, or sometimes we've even had things where the audience is inside the house and they look outside the window at the dancers out in the park. We've had dancers dance with trees, like around a tree. And the first time we were there, they let us throw aerial straps over a tree, and we did a duet on aerial straps.
Oh, wow.
Actually with the tree, no harm came to the tree.
Right.
And there's one building in Oak Park has a huge front porch. And I, through all of the companies and my dancers, doing this walk sequence. I also invited, my idea was to draw in communities. So I had professional dancers along with younger and older, people in their 60s or 70s dancing together on this porch. And so I've always been interested in that kind of work because it's just a different, it's a different frame, and it means something different to the movement than it would in a theater. We do perform in traditional theaters as well. So,
right.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining these are all original works then.
Oh, for sure. That's kind of the purpose of my company, is for me to be able to create work. And then as I've gotten older, I've encouraged others to do the same. And a lot of times when we have these events, I'll invite other artists. Sometimes it's dancers in my company that also want to choreograph. They have an idea for a work, and I give them rehearsal time and space to do that. And then I'll invite artists outside the company as well. I just think everyone ought to be making dances, honestly.
Sure.
That's kind of my thing. The world's a better place
Of
if
course.
everyone's making
Right,
it.
right. Yeah, of course, of course. But so what I'm starting to imagine, I mean, maybe walk me through the process. Do you design your dance around the space, or is it the opposite where you may choreograph the dance and then you're thinking about, well, where could we actually perform this?
It's a little bit of back and forth. Unity Temple, which was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, it is here in Oak Park as well. And they invited us to perform in this space. And they do have a space in the sanctuary that's like a stage, and you can dance there, except that the rest of the building is so lovely. The stairways and the staircases and the balconies that they have. And so I asked them if we could dance there as well. We did dance in the sanctuary, but we were around. And so what I did was I spent a lot of time in the space, just me by myself, sketching and kind of figuring some things out. And then I would go into the studio and work with the dancers. And we did this for, over the space of a couple of months. And then, of course, I finally got the dancers into the space. And I was like, okay. And things had to change. So I kind of started with some stuff created in the studio that, between my visits and in my head, I thought would work. But once we were in the space, we kept a lot of it, obviously, but then there were there were adjustments. And I was very inspired by that space. I'm inspired by a lot of different spaces, but it's very symmetrical. And so I found, maybe this tells you about my personality, but I found the symmetry of the space to be interesting. And I wanted to lay the human body over all the squares, because he just made I hope everyone gets to see this space sometime in their life, because it's just really worth it. And I put the dancers in unitards, which I never do because I hated them when I was a dancer. But I wanted the human form within that linear symmetrical space. And it just, I don't know, it really resonated, I think. And we had a huge audience, and we got great reviews, and it was just one of those things that came together, but that's generally how I work. Like I really want to honor the space, and I try not to turn the space into a theater, right? Because if we're going to be in a traditional theater, we should just rent out a theater. So I let the space be the space, and then I let the human bodies be the human bodies.
So. Oh, interesting. Okay. So normally, do you have a permanent space where you rehearse and perform? Do you have your own theater?
No. We're itinerant. We used to rehearse at Hubbard Street, but as I mentioned, they closed because of the pandemic. And then the other place we rehearsed was at the Chicago Academy for the Arts, but they're just not open. I don't know what's happening. So we rehearse any place that will have us, especially now. Fortunately, we've developed a collaboration. It's called the Chicago Movement Collective, and they are at Intrigue Dance Center, which is in Chicago, and it's kind of on the south and west side. And so we're there now, and they've been very generous. And but that's something that dance companies do. You're always looking for space.
Sure.
And we do not have a dance school, even though most of us teach at other studios, and maybe one day we will, but that is that's not in the cards yet.
Okay. Well, you don't have a dance school, but I think you were telling me as we were chatting before we actually started the interview that you had you basically were able to bring on all the dancers that were part of the Hubbard
It's called Hubbard Street Dance Chicago. That's a really big dance company. You know, they're kind of known worldwide, and they have their own space. You know, a dance school. And so I was teaching at their dance school, and then renting space during the day for my dance company to rehearse. So that's how that worked. And then the space had to shut down because of COVID.
Right. So it doesn't look like Hubbard Street is going to be opening up again?
Well, I think the company is, but their studios are not. Right. So now they're itinerant. So they're now looking for rehearsal space.
Right, right.
Right.
Well, and you also were able to bring on some of the dancers from that group and create a new program with online workshops, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, right. So while before the pandemic, I was teaching modern dance classes at Hubbard Street at their space. And then when they shut down, and they shut down rather quickly after the pandemic started, I started teaching classes on Facebook Live. And then my students that took my class at Hubbard Street found me on Facebook. And so probably until the summer, I just taught for free on Facebook Live. And then I asked everyone if they'd be willing to pay for classes. And so I started summer classes. And and then now I've got 10 or 11 regular people that come every week. So that's been really good.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's that? 10 or 11 people that come? Are you saying 10 or 11 instructors?
No, just dancers that take my class.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's still great. And this is, so now you have kind of a new revenue stream with these workshops, right? Do you think you're going to continue that?
Yeah, I plan to continue it as long as it's a good revenue stream, which at the moment it's good. And we may, we were talking before about maybe it's opening up a little bit now, and there's more in-person things. And in fact, the studio where we rehearse at now, Intrigue, they have both in-person and online classes. And I imagine eventually my modern dance class will become that as well, where people can come in person, but then if you want to stay home and be online, you can do that. And, it's, and I think that's here to stay, honestly, for like years, probably.
I think so. And not just in your field, but it's probably going to be the same in music. In this last year, I'm a musician, so I happen to keep tabs on what's happening with the music venues that I like. Of course, the ones that have a little bit bigger and they have a little bit of money to spend, they invested in video streaming technology, and now they have that all on premise. So, I mean, they could start potentially selling tickets for those shows, kind of live stream performances, and people could watch it from anywhere in the world. So we're going to see how that, pans out for them.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think not only are people comfortable with it, it's, there's other opportunities. Yeah, there's other opportunities to create different kinds of performances that, particularly for dance and theater companies, I think they can get very inventive. With music, it's kind of, it's kind of different. Because you can have cameras following people around, or multiple cameras, and you could pan between, or not pan, but kind of swap between them. But you're kind of missing the if you like the kind of music I like anyway, you're kind of missing the loudness, and people spilling their beers on you, and sometimes that's part of it.
Well, and I think music is not a visual art form first, so it doesn't translate quite as much as maybe dance does. We also started, I didn't mention this before, but we also started doing this thing. It's called Wine with Winnie, and it's on Zoom, and people come. It's kind of like the old, we used to have these events where you have wine and people look at in a dance studio and they watch the dance. And so now it's translated online. And what I do is I show rehearsal footage of work that you wouldn't normally get to see. Or, for our dance film, I had just like reels of stuff that never made it into the final cut of the film. And people seem to really like that. I mean, I'm honestly a little surprised, but we have anywhere from 20 to 30 people. It's a free event, and of course, I always ask for money at the end for donations. But people come, and like the same people come every month that we do it. It's great, and yeah.
Well, that is interesting. I've never heard that before. I mean, obviously with music, you know, when you buy like a box set of your favorite artists, you get a lot of that stuff. You get the outtakes, you get the demo tracks and stuff. And that's really interesting. You know, I've never heard of a dance studio, or I should say a dance performance company doing that sort of thing. That's really interesting that audiences take to that as well. I never heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like outtakes at the, when people go to the movies, only it's not really mistakes. It's just sort of, I think it's interesting for people to see how something grows and changes. Like when I first make it, it looks a certain way, but then of course, as time goes on, you adjust it. I'm sure it's the same with composing music, right? And then and you can see it evolve. And that's interesting. So.
Well, it is. Well, since you mentioned that, no, you're right. It is kind of similar. I guess I'm trying to draw a parallel to music because, yeah, people ask me sometimes, how do you write a song? Where does the idea come from? How does it evolve? Okay, I can answer that question, but I never would have guessed that, putting together a dance choreography was kind of the same thing. Tell me a little bit about that. How does an idea start?
Yeah, I think, I think different artists comes from different places, but a lot of times, I haven't done this in the last couple of years, but a lot of times I made work from books that I've read. I made a 1 hour dance from the book East of Eden by John Steinbeck, or sometimes it's just a short story or a poem or something like that that inspires a story, and then I'll create around that. Lately, I've been, even before the pandemic, especially like, because we made a work at Unity Temple, and my works tend to be very abstract, just kind of interesting movement put together. I worked with a local composer. Her name is Renee Baker, and she's a kind of avant-garde classical music composer. She used to be director of the Chicago Sinfonietta, and she's like a force. She's very short too. It's really funny because I'm tall, and there's pictures of us, but she's amazing. And so sometimes music inspires me, and although I try not to pick a piece of music and then choreograph to that, because I like the movement to have its own structure and then layer the music on top. It drives my dancers crazy, but but they've learned to count. I don't really count, but they do, so that's good. And so it comes from different places, and it does evolve, and that's something I think like getting older has really helped. Like sometimes you have the germ. I'm sure it's like this with music. You have the germ of an idea, and sometimes you need to just let it keep talking to you rather than trying to like bite it off and make the work. Just kind of start and see where it takes you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's right. It is. Sometimes it is very much that way. Sometimes it comes all in one sitting.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes, yeah, it grows over time like a geranium. So,
or fine wine.
Or a fine wine, yes. Right, very good. Okay, so coming up, you're going to have your first outdoor performance. Is this your first, not just outdoor, but is this going to be your first live performance since pandemic?
It'll actually be the second.
Okay.
We did one outdoors in October before the second surge, or if that was the third surge, whatever it was, and that was all outdoors. And then we're going to do a similar event in May. Sunday, May 16th. And I'm inviting other artists to create work in the garden. And the idea is that the audience will go through like in groups of 10 or 12 or whatever the public health department says we can do. And they'll just go through the garden and they'll see a dance in each spot around the garden. And And then at the end, we did this in October, and I think it worked really well. Is we had people. I've seen this. In fact, I got this from something I saw online. I think it was. I'm not going to think of the. It was a comedian, and he did an outdoor event. But anyway, so you put two chairs together, and then the chairs are like 8 or 10. The sets of chairs are 8 or 10, and we had about 35 or 40 people, socially distanced, outdoors with masks. And then there's a big open area in the garden, and then we did like a group work at the end, because the different spots in the garden tend to be solos or duets, maybe a trio or something. And I like to sort of bring the whole audience together with all of the dancers. It was a nice, and the whole event's only like an hour, so it's not. That's another thing that makes it safer, right? Is that it's shorter.
Sure. But is this going to be a one-time thing, or is this going to be something you'll repeat?
Dancers don't get to repeat stuff like musicians do. We often wish we could just go into bars and do stuff, and maybe one day we will. But yeah, it'll just be one event on Sunday, May 16th at 4:00, and we'll see how ticket sales go. We might add a second show.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hold on. Explain that to me. Why? And you'll forgive my ignorance about this, but why is it that dancers don't get to repeat their performances?
We do, but it's usually only like once or twice, and that it's a function of audience, right? And mostly because of that. Like we don't have the ticket sales that a music show or even a theater show would have. And there's lots of reasons for that involve I could get political here for a second, but dance is considered a female or a woman's art form, right? And women are automatically not as important or interesting as the other art forms, or men. And that's a political theory, though. We could do a whole podcast about that.
Maybe we should.
But that's just kind of the thing. And so typically for a dance company, you have one weekend of shows, 2 weekends if you're really lucky, and that's it. Like even Hubbard Street, they're a big deal here in Chicago, right? They would do 3, sometimes 4 weeks throughout the year. And that's it. And even the Joffrey Ballet, they have the Nutcracker. They only do that for 3 weeks. So it's just kind of the nature of the beast, I think.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. I didn't know that. So what do you see beyond this performance? What's the atmosphere like in Chicago? What is the city doing what are they promising in terms of, being able to open up and being able to encourage people to get out? Summer's coming, and summer's a beautiful time in Chicago. So I can't imagine they're not gonna want people to sit at home, right? They'd rather have them out in the streets spending their money.
Yeah, for sure. And the summer is a big time in Chicago, right? Like even before the pandemic, everybody's out and doing stuff. But I think what's going to happen this summer, so we have this thing called Chicago Dance Month in Chicago, and usually it's April, and this year it's June. So there's going to be a lot of, summer's going to start with that. We're going to, I'm trying to work up some gigs for the summer. And then in the fall, I think it's wait and see. I mean, we are getting vaccinated quickly here, but it's still iffy. We are imagining having a show at the Athenaeum Theater, which is a big theater here in Chicago. I'm hoping to celebrate our 25th anniversary sometime soon. We were supposed to do that last year, but it just wasn't safe, and so I postponed. But we, as a company, we're kind of set because we're used to doing stuff outside. We're used to doing weird stuff in weird spaces, and so we're okay. And so we're kind of just limited by our imaginations, but also by venue imaginations, because there's some people that are just not, understandably, they're not open to doing the usual stuff, and so it's a little bit hard to get the wheels spinning. But I'm hopeful. I really am. I'm the eternal optimist.
Mm-hmm.
And we've just
Yeah.
kept going.
Well, yeah, and I think there is reason for hope, not just because people's attitudes are changing, because people are feeling a little bit more optimistic, but I'm seeing on the ticket sites a lot more tickets are being added, and a lot fewer reschedules. Some good signs. And the question, I guess, is going to be, how willing people are going to be to go outdoors again and be in public spaces. I am hearing both sides of the story. I'm hearing that, some people are not as ready, and yet others are telling me, oh, we're totally expecting a flood of people. So we'll see. But I think there is reason for optimism, and hopefully you're able to get yourself back into full swing again and celebrate I think you could still call it a 25-year anniversary, right? Just say you skipped that year.
Yeah, no, totally. Or we'll just call it the 26th year. I mean, I don't know, but
25.1. Yeah.
yeah,
All good.
right.
All right. Well, Winnie, thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast today. I definitely learned something. I learned about your creative process. I learned a little bit more about how dance companies operate. And really, I appreciate it. I enjoyed it very much. So go ahead and give your websites and social media sites and where people can find out more and get in touch with you.
Okay, awesome. So our website is www.winifredhaun.org, and that's WINIFRED. That is my real name, Haun, HAUN.org. And then we're on Facebook, Winifred Haun and Dancers. We're on Instagram, Winifred Haun Dancers. I'm on Twitter. It's more of a personal thing for me on Twitter, but you can contact me there. Those are all the things. I'm easy to find. I'm really easy to find.
Great. And of course, I'll include all those links in the description of this podcast so people will have them on hand. So great stuff. Look forward to speaking with you again sometime, and maybe next year, and hearing how your summer went and how things are progressing for you.
That would be great, Vinay. I really appreciate it.
And there you go. It's time. Your pizza's here.
I wish it was going to be pizza, but yes. Thank you so much.
All right, Winnie. Thanks. You have a great one.
Yeah. Good luck to you.